Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. I'm back with one of these critique videos for you. So essentially this is an informal analysis, and being an analysis I will pause the video. I'll probably do this quite frequently depending on how much is going on, so this is a disclaimer from the start. If you want to watch the original video or watch someone watching the original, this probably isn't for you. If you want to learn something, get some new insights or maybe a new appreciation for the song, then stick around. I will break down some of the concepts and ideas that we come across here, which you can get with the aptly named timestamp. So this is one that's been requested or suggested quite a bit. I think the band is pronounced Nemophila. I don't know if that's a fear of water, if this is just me being innocent and naive about what the name means. Raitei, I've got no idea how you pronounce that, so please correct my butchered pronunciation down in those comments. Like I say, this was a suggestion. It's stuff that I'm more than open to finding sort of all sorts of fantastic new bands that way, so fire them down there if you've got anything you'd like me to look at. Okay, I was not expecting this to be quite as heavy or as metal as it is down-tuned. Or to be wearing goofy glasses and a moustache. What's that about? Is this some in-joke that I don't know? Ah, brilliant. Okay. Okay, it's a pretty straightforward riff, but it's done well. They're all playing nice and tight, and this is the sort of thing that's just going to sound huge live because they're all kind of playing that same dun 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 thing. Right. And on the subject of this being live, this sounds like a very honest recording. I don't think there's been an awful lot of post-production on here. It looks like they kind of put mics in, probably EQ'd and mixed things, and then just kind of stuck it out, which is kind of cool because it's really like a raw version. This is what the song essentially will sound like. Okay, that was quite unexpected. Our vocals are a wee bit low in the mix, so it's a little bit difficult to hear what she was saying there. And again, because it's live, it doesn't have all the kind of like reverb and delay and all the stuff you're used to hearing in production, which is something I quite like because you don't hear it nowadays that often. It's just a kind of stripped down live performance like this. And then the growling came on over at the top there. It took me for a curveball. So I can't totally tell who's doing the screaming, if it's the backing vocals or if it is the singer, because there's a lot, there's different layers going on there. There's some of them singing without distortion, there's some of them really putting the kind of the growls and the fries into it, and kind of mixtures in between. You can add a bit of vocal distortion. You know that if you're kind of groaning at something and you go, that's essentially how they're making this, but just putting more stomach into it, so you get that, you get more of a growl from it. Okay, this is cool. I thought it was going to be just like a metal thing. Now we've gone into like a really upbeat, kind of typical Japanese rock. I'm guessing they're a Japanese band from what I've been told about them. So it's a really nice kind of dynamic and almost like a genre shift within a song. It looks like the drummer is doing a backing vocal, which it sounds like it's a third above, which is just a really nice, catchy way of making a chorus line pop. And again, like pop punk, that's something that they use an awful lot. So the line, if you're harmonising that a third, so I'll try and do those on time and edit them together. 2, 3, 4. So hopefully future me's edited those together and they're in key enough. I'm a backing vocalist. I resigned myself to that fate many moons ago. Well, hopefully in key enough that you can hear how these two melody lines can work together. Okay, I'm going to put that back. This is a total music nerd thing, but I think she went to the major there when it would have technically been a minor chord if we were playing in key. Alright, I've grabbed my guitar to make sure I wasn't talking total nonsense, and I'll break this down more thoroughly in the following section, but essentially we had like a B flat to G to C. Now normally that would go to a D minor, but here they played the D major, so that's the note that you hear her singing. That's why it's got this kind of like cool, slightly uplifting vibe to it. If you enjoy these reactions, do let me know with a comment and a like. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, hit subscribe and do the notifications thing. I appreciate the feedback I've been getting so far as well. One of them was like, when you are pausing, put the video back, so I'm trying to remember to do that. Okay, it sounds like we're going into some sort of guitar solo here. So just before we do, while I do appreciate the rawness of the mix, they could have maybe done with running the vocals through a compressor. So what a compressor does is it makes the quiet stuff louder, the louder stuff a bit quieter, and it means you get a slightly more even thing, because there's some bits that it's not that you can't hear, but you're struggling a wee bit to do it. So before we get fully into the Shredfest, there's some cool stuff going on there at the start of it here, right? See how there's that kind of feedback, that kind of ringing out. It's just like... What she's got there is the guitar's up loud enough and the sound's driven that she's getting feedback, which I've explained in another video you can get with the eye up there, but she's also got her wah pedal, which is essentially it sweeps through different frequencies, so that's where you're getting this real kind of sound from. That wah wah. I thought that was going to go on a full-on Shredfest, just a nice keep it short, keep it sweet, cool. Yeah, I really like these gang vocals where there's like, they're all doing it. Some of them, I don't know how many of them are screaming, how many are shouting, how many are just singing, but it's a really cool, cool thing to do. It's just a great way of doing it, because you can really nail that kind of hook with the different textures as well. It's the sort of thing like in the studio you'd layer vocal upon vocal upon vocal to make it pop, and that's the way you do it live. Just give everyone a microphone. Brilliant. Cool, yeah, there's just a lot going on genre-wise. I think this is a thing that's typical. I'm pretty new to the whole kind of, I don't know if is this kind of J-rock or is it J-metal or what? Let me know what genre they kind of count as, but it's this cool thing where it's like fusing together different elements from different styles and doing it in quite a nice, robust way. Cool, so what she's doing in the solo here is using a Phrygian dominant scale. I've covered this before, you can get it with the eye up there. But whenever you hear this kind of like almost exotic, edgy sounding metal, it's probably this. If you've listened to metal or songs like this, you'll have heard it before. It's just kind of a flavour. This is all music theory is. It's just putting a word to something, a sound that you probably already know. As an Iron Maiden fan, I always love trading solos when one ends and the other begins. I just love that. So in fairness to them as well, these are for the solos. They're doing the kind of level of technicality in them. They're using a fairly low gain and fairly uncompressed guitar sounds. If you listen to like a band like Bolivia, they use an incredibly compressed sound because the stuff they do is it's very intricate and fiddly. And again, the compressor is doing that thing that I suggested on the vocals, kind of making the quiet things louder, making the louder things quiet. And it makes it kind of easier to play these things. So if you're playing a solo without lots of compression and lots of gain, it is harder to do. So fair play if you're pulling it off. And again, as an Iron Maiden fan, I'm a huge fan of the twin guitar solo. This is the you know, you have one guitar solo trays into the next one and then they come together. It's just brilliant. And also with the vocal concept that I don't know how effectively I demonstrated that where they're harmonizing it. It's the same thing with the guitar. They're basically playing a note from the key that works well with the other note that's being played, usually in what you call thirds. So thirds are, there's a note here, there's another note in the scale, and then there's another note, and that's the third, and they just work really nicely together. Cool. It sounds like she's warmed up her voice more here. It might be a confidence thing. It could also just be a mixing thing, like I've kind of mentioned probably too many times now. She just sounds a bit fuller in her voice here, a bit more confident in the performance. It's nice to hear. So in fact, actually, that kind of shout she did there, so that's a good example of using a bit of the distortion, but not that full kind of thing she was doing before, just putting a bit of the whoa. Really effective as well with the whole band dropping out and the vocals just being there by themselves and them coming back in. Great. So I like that by contrast with one of the kind of much more full-on screams that I was kind of referring to before. Okay, yeah, so much stuff going on. Here you probably hear this kind of weird, slightly squelchy sound going. It sounds like someone's put a flanger on. I'll pop it back. It's almost like that robotic metal sound. Cool, I didn't know exactly what I was expecting, but I don't think I was expecting that. I really enjoyed the meshing together of different things. There's some really metal bits and like that intense screaming, and then the kind of gang vocals, the more kind of pop punk elements, and the just kind of catchy choruses. I like all these kind of elements coming together. It's a really cool thing, I think. And speaking of these elements, I'll break some of them down now, and hopefully they'll be of interest to you. Okay, so I'm going to break down that part of chorus. What I did was just put the vocal lines on guitar because I cannot sing anywhere near that high at all. So we'll break down the rhythm part first, and we'll look at the leads and kind of how they work together, why it sounds quite as cool as it does. As a side note, I think they have 7-string guitars. I've just got 6-string, but I've gone down to drop D, which seems to have helped out for this riff. I think you would probably need a 7-string if you want to play the full song. But we've got a B flat. I'm just doing a B flat 5. Up to the C. Then essentially it's a D minor, right? There's a riff here though. So the riff part, you've got the open D, C5, open D, C5 to D slides, what I'm doing. Again, because they got the 7th string, they can play this differently, but this is how I've arranged it for the 6th string. Right, then after that starts off really similar. Again, you got this B flat 5. This time we're to a G5, to the C. Then this time essentially it goes to D major. But the riff went something like. So slow that down a wee bit. So it's a really similar idea to the kind of fill we had there before, chugging on the open D and using the C5 and the D5 power chords. So when I was talking before about how they were singing a major note and changing the tonality in the chorus, that's what's going on. So the first time we have the D minor, the second time it's major. So I just go through the chords. So the first time it goes to the D minor. Second time, G to the C to D major. And the next section starts on that B flat again. So in terms of the theory, what is going on is we're starting in F major, the D minor. That's the key we're in. We've got a 4 chord, up to a 5 chord, up to a 6 chord when we're playing that D minor. Second time round it starts off the same. We've got the B flat, just the 4 chord. Then we go to a G5, which is kind of a G sus4 because of the vocals, but we'll touch on that in a minute. You then have a C to the D major. So the reason this works is because we're using the G and more so the C, because that's definitely a C major, as a kind of what you'd call a pivot chord or for a pivot modulation. Because what we're doing is moving into the key of G major. Because we start off in the key of F, the B flat, the G minor, which is just a G5 really, the C and the D minor, the only one chord that has in common with G major is the C major. Sort of the G, because we're playing a power chord or like a sus4 rather than a major or minor chord, but we're really using the C to change from the F major, or I suppose D minor, to the G major. So in the key of F major, C is the 5th chord. In the key of G major, C is the 4th chord. They're both major chords in their respective scales, so you can use it to kind of switch between the two scales. Not necessarily in terms of a kind of perfect music theory, what would be the smoothest modulation, but it's one that's common enough in pop music, and is like there's enough commonality between the keys that it doesn't sound too jarring, but you can tell that something interesting is going on. And what might be confusing here is that when I'm saying we've changed to G major, you might be like, well, you said we're playing over a D, what's going on there? Well, when there's a D minor in F major, it's the 6th chord. The D major is the 5th chord in G major. But if this sounds like total nonsense, just trust me, it all makes sense. And there's a slight, you might notice the slight Beatlesy sound. That's because what they're kind of doing is implying a Mixolydian mode, or the dominant 7th, when they land on the D. So again, if this all just sounds like nonsense, it's not all music theories is putting a word to a sound. So if something sounds a bit Beatlesy and it's got that, maybe a bit like She Sells Sanctuary. I've done a lesson on how to play the intro riff, which you can get with the eye up there. That sound, that Mixolydian sound, this dominant 7th kind of Beatlesy hippie sound, is the same thing that they're leaning into here. So these theories, like music theory, and these sounds don't exist in isolation. They can be spread across multiple genres and appropriated by any music, really. For the vocal melody, I'm going to play it down the octave because it's going to be easier for me to demonstrate what's happening with the chords. So that's the first time round. The second time. So hopefully you heard when I went that note there, that's when we're going to the major. The harmony here, I'm not entirely sure because it's quite low in the mix. I think what it's doing is going... So it's mainly in thirds until the end, where we get it's playing in sixths, which is basically a just inverted third. We start off with that B flat. The note she's singing is a major seventh, an A. So over the B flat, it's quite tense. But what this does is it really gives that sense of yearning, particularly because she resolves down to the sixth and then the fifth of the chord. So you're going tension, a bit more tension, resolution. Right, she stays on this note here, this A, when the chord goes up to C. So you're getting a kind of a C add 6. She goes down to the 5th and the 4th, so there's a lot more tension created over that. So I try and play the parts together. So far you've got like a... So that last note I had there, when we go back to the A this time, the rhythm's playing a D minor. As you can probably tell by my fingers, that is very much in the chord. It's the 5th, so this whole bit is kind of building tension. Then we kind of get that security of being in part of the chord. Again, she's going back to that note. Then when we lead into the kind of repeat, she's picking the 5th of the chord. So we've got an F going to G over the B flat to the C, which is the 5th of both the chords. Second time round, we're starting off again with the vocals on that A over the B flat, creating that great major 7th. And the vocals go up to here, which is a C, so we get this lovely 9th chord. What's really cool is the vocals stay on this note here, this C, and the chords underneath change to G. So we get this really nice B flat 9 to G sus4, which resolves because the vocals go from the C up to D, but we're still over the G. The D being G's 5th. If you can follow what I'm saying in terms of the theory, you can probably hear that is a bit more tense. This is a bit more consonant. Again, kind of more tense, a bit more laid back, but still edgy. There's tension, and then the release when it goes up to the 5th, right? The chords go down to a C, and the vocals are singing a G. G is C's 5th, so this is nice and consonant, but it does go down to the F sharp, which is C sharp 4. So that gives you that dissonance. So we're getting this cool kind of consonance, dissonance. And then it goes up to the D, and what's being sung here is a 4th down to a 3rd. So that's the G again down to the F sharp. And if I put that second part together, so you can hear it's a lovely meshing of tension and release, creating dissonance. It's kind of floatiness, resolving it, creating more tension, and eventually resolving it to really satisfying major. Click there for more reactions and analysis videos, or click there for some more metal. Hit subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the channel, you know, all that lovely good stuff. Take it easy, guys. Have a good one.